Following feedback from agronomists about the silverleaf whitefly decision support tool, we did a review of the data on which this tool was developed, and we've been able to come up with an altered sampling strategy that provides the same outcome that is much simpler for agronomists to use. The revised matrix is a case of back to the future, where we can use a binomial sampling technique to assess whitefly numbers in the field and make a decision based on the percentage of infested leaves that we come across during the sampling process. Ideally, we want to start this sampling at around 750 day degrees on the revised 1532 day degree model. And this is roughly around early flowering. And we then sample once or twice a week to build a profile of what that population is doing from early to mid flowering through until when the bulbs are opening up. The really critical period is mid flowering until around cutout. If we've got a population of whitefly that's building up, that's where we're likely to make a control decision. So when we're sampling whitefly, we're aiming for the mid canopy, about 11 to 14 nodes down from the terminal, which on this plant here is roughly at about just past my elbow if you wanted a rough and ready measure. Like the DST, the sampling strategy is based on nymphs because the nymphs aren't moving throughout the canopy during the day. But unlike the DST where you are required to count every single nymph on the underside of the leaf, we now just assess this leaf for the presence and absence of nymphs. And what we're interested in is large nymphs. If there's one nymph or no nymphs, the leaf is uninfested. But if there's two or more nymphs, that leaf is classified as infested. And what we want to build is a picture of the percentage of infested leaves. We essentially want to move through the crop, taking samples 3 to 4, 5 metres apart, jumping across a number of rows, at least 50 metres in from the edge of the field and at 2 locations in the crop. Collect at least 30 leaves and calculate a percentage of infested leaves based on that binomial approach where 2 or more nymphs constitutes an infested leaf. We can then refer to the revised silverleaf whitefly management matrix. Percentage infestation will change over time. If you find yourself in the low risk zone, continue sampling and check the trajectory of that population over time to make sure that it stays in that low risk of subsequent honeydew production. If you find yourself in the high risk zone, particularly for 2 consecutive checks, you're in an unambiguous situation where you're going to need to enact control for silverleaf whitefly to prevent subsequent honeydew once the crop begins opening bulbs. However, a lot of populations that you'll be checking will track along in that moderate zone. This is where we'll need consecutive checking over a couple of weeks to really identify the trajectory of that population. And if that trajectory is in that moderate zone and you've got an increasing population over 2 to 3 consecutive checks, you're going to need to take a control action and look at using one of the recommended products for that particular point in the crop's development. When we get to the open cotton stage, we no longer progress with the moderate and high risk population trajectories, but we do retain the low risk population trajectory. The reason for this is that from that open bulb stage onwards, we really want to focus our management on preventing honeydew. So our management decisions during this period will basically revolve around assessing the efficacy of any products that we might have used to control whitefly leading into that stage, together with the contribution that we're likely to start seeing from natural enemies such as Eretmosceras, looking at parasitism levels, or the number of other predators that might occur in the field. But also keeping an eye on what the honeydew levels in the crop are, paying particular attention to those lower leaves in the canopy, whether we're seeing any light speckling on the leaves. That is often a precursor to getting a sheen, and we've found, particularly where we have seasons with drier than average finishes, that sheen can definitely constitute a stickiness threat for the lint that would be later picked. When assessing nymph mortality during this period, you really need magnification. An experienced person with a hand lens or a stereo microscope will quite easily be able to tell whether a nymph is viable or whether it's been killed by the use of an insecticide or, importantly, has been parasitized by something like Eretmosceras. And to help with that, there's a good video on the CottonInfo YouTube that shows you how to identify parasitism. There's also now a new tool, a phone app that requires a particular lens that you can use to photograph nymphs with magnification, and it will determine for you whether those nymphs are viable or not. And that can be used to give you an accurate assessment of nymph mortality, particularly during that open cotton period, to determine whether a population might be bouncing back or whether it's tracking towards that low risk period, which is ideally where we want to land. So I hope this video better clarifies for you the new sampling and thresholds for silverleaf whitefly and how you might use it in your crop to make management decisions. More resources can be found on the CottonInfo website with a specific fact sheet that talks to this new threshold, as well as the Cotton Pest Management Guide.